Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. This is episode 551. It's just going to be an internal show between me and Stephen. We're going to be talking about plugins, and specifically if you've got a plugin that's been a bit naughty, as I would say, and it's really slowing the site down or doing all sorts of funky stuff, and how you deal with that. I will introduce my great co-host, Stephen, first. Stephen, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers, the new ones?
My name's Stephen Souter. I'm from zipfish.io. We make WordPress blazing fast by optimizing the servers and the code that runs your WordPress site. You head over to zipfish.io and run a speed test.
That's great. Like I say, we're going to be talking about all things WordPress plugins. Before we get into the main content of the show, I just want to talk about our major sponsor, which is Kinsta Hosting. Kinsta Hosting is a WordPress-only hosting provider. It uses the power of Google Cloud. They've been going since 2013. They have over 100,000 websites hosted on their platform. Basically, if you're into performance, you should look at Kinsta. Performance for WooCommerce, performance for any WordPress LMS or membership site, for yourself or for your clients. So I suggest you go over to Kinsta, have a look at what they've got to offer. I suggest also that you buy one of their packages. And the main thing, if you do that, is can you tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic? It really does help the show. So on to the main content. So, Stephen, what's the scenario? So we've got a plugin. We got like something not running on the site, something not looking correct on the site, and how do we deal with that initially?
Yeah, I think one of the most frustrating things working in the WordPress space, because like Spencer, who's part of our Friday podcast, oftentimes says it's kind of like, like this Lego block where you can take all these different pieces and assemble them together and create these really cool, unique solutions. But because we have all these pieces, what happens when one of those pieces go wrong, aka a plugin? What happens when a plugin starts throwing an error and something visually looks wrong, or your checkout is getting blocked, or you're trying to do something in the back end, and when you try to save something, all you're doing is seeing an error, and it's super frustrating. And inevitably, generally, people's gut reaction is let's reach out to support, but like that can take, I don't know, 24 hours if you're working on it late in the evening, or depending on when you're reaching out to that customer support team. And because it is like this Lego block, a lot of times a plugin is failing, not necessarily because of that plugin, but it could easily be other plugins that are causing a specific plugin to fail. Like, I don't know if people remember back when who can forget when Elementor updated to version 3, they had their own internal issues, but then other plugins that were built on top of Elementor had their own issues to deal with, and it was kind of like this nasty stack of problems going on. And the faster you can get to a resolution, right? Like the faster you can get things up and running and get back to business. So what is the best way is the question that we want to answer today, is like, what is the best way to go about quickly trying to solve your problem and fix it yourself, so you don't have to wait for support to get back to you. And then ideally only have to reach out to support if you can't fix it yourself, right? If there's something actually significantly wrong with the plugin. So I guess scenario, all of a sudden there's some error on your site. What do you do? One of the biggest things or most important things to look at right away is to see what is in your log, what is in your PHP error log. So if you don't know, almost every hosting provider out there has a log of all of the PHP errors that are coming off of your site. And this is going to be the key to finding out what is causing that error to happen. What plugin is the plugin that is the one responsible for the problem? And if you open up your file, your error log file, it can be in different places. Sometimes you need to FTP into your server, and it's like right in the root install folder of WordPress. Other times, like let's say Flywheel, there is a tab, I think it's in the advanced tab, to download your error log. WP Engine, I forget where it is there, but sometimes you have to log into your server admin dashboard to get access to that error log. But essentially, the goal would be to find that error log so you can download it and look at it. And if you've never looked at an error log before, it can look kind of scary and look kind of intimidating because there's just lines and lines and lines and lines of errors and warnings, maybe a fatal error, and then there will be like this file path after it. There'll be some sort of indication of what it is, like if it's a variable that can't be found or something that's not defined or a bad index of something. But what you're looking for is that file path. And what you'll probably see is something like var ww slash wp content slash like plugin slash and then like plugin name. And you're looking for the plugin name. Like what is the name of the plugin that is causing the error? Warnings can primarily be like disregarded. They're important because like you don't want a warning. A warning is usually saying like, hey, something's wrong and could break, or that the plugin author needs to update something. But warnings rarely are the reason why something is not working. It should actually be an error, or if your whole site is down, it'll be like a fatal error. But a warning can also be an indication of maybe what it is. So in looking at that file path, you can indicate which plugin is causing the problem. That way you know which plugin to reach out to. And if you have that error log open, try performing the action that caused the problem. Like, can you not save a post? So if that's the problem, like the data is not saving when you try to save a post, you would just click save, reopen that error log and see what like the last couple lines are, just so you get the most recent data and recent information. And so you really have two options from there. One, you can deactivate the plugin because that will probably sort out your problem. Or two, find a different plugin that will ideally sort out the problem. Or three, reach out to the developer and say, hey, this is a problem, can you fix it? And the developer of the plugin will probably have to push an update to their plugin, which can take a little bit of time depending like how many people they have on staff and how big of a plugin it is and how easy the problem is to solve. But we kind of like earlier were talking about like these compounding problems that one plugin could be throwing an error, but it could be actually because of another plugin. So what I like to do is to like quickly figure out what the root problem is if there's an error, a plugin causing error, deactivate that plugin, see if the error goes away from your log and from your site, then you know that's the plugin that's the cause. But sometimes you can deactivate a plugin and you'll still be getting errors from other plugins, which means it's probably something a little bit deeper, something farther down the path. And you need to kind of look into what exactly is going on. But what happens if you can't access the logs? What happens if like your server, whoever's serving your site has that locked down and you can't find them, you can't access them? Or if you reach out to them, they won't give them to you. Different server companies do different things. But another thing you can do is you can define a global variable called debug. So I'm just going to pull this up so I don't say it wrong. But what you want to do is open up your config file. So that's where like everything is defined. It's like wp-config.php. And that is your primary like configuration file for WordPress. It defines a lot of stuff. You usually never have to touch it. It's going to be in your root directory. So if you FTP into your server and you see all your files there, it's going to be like it's going to be right in that like first set of files that you see usually. And all you have to do is you can Google this, but you just have to define, and then you define the variable wp-debug, true. And that's going to print the errors to the front end of WordPress. So like you go to the home page, you'll see the errors displayed right there on the home screen, which isn't great from like a user standpoint. But if you're trying to just quickly figure out what the problem is, you can throw that into your config file and you can figure out kind of where those errors are coming from and start dissecting what's going on and ideally solve it and figure out, what needs to change. Or
it's a plugin you can install that helps with that as well.
What I found is like if you just reach out to a plugin developer and be like, hey, your plugin isn't doing X, Y, or Z. Like this WooCommerce is like the king of this. They'll be like, well, change your theme to the store theme, deactivate every plugin except WooCommerce, and see if that fixes the problem. And it's like, well, that's not super helpful because I have a live store to run. I can't change my
Well,
theme.
I was going to get onto that because everything you said I totally agree with, but I think especially if it's a, also, I'm trying to find the right words here, Stephen. If a site is really critical, and normally critical is it's making quite a bit of money for somebody, that makes it critical normally. That could be a WooCommerce site, that can be a membership site. Normally, if the site is involved in the transaction of money in some way. Now, I disagree with anything you've just said. It's just that I think we're kind of jumping the gun a little bit, because if it's a critical site, unless they got somebody, or they're on a retainer with a support company, maybe like you do some support. My business does support. Unless they're on some kind of retainer, and that retainer's at a certain level that they get critical support, i.e., on Sunday afternoon, if something goes down, they've got a text number, and whatever activity you're enjoying at that present moment, you're going to jump out of bed, or somebody from your team's going to jump out of bed, Stephen, and get it sorted. It's normally they want to get up and running as quick as possible, and then have the ability to have time to sort out this problem. So normally that's around having really great backups. That's around maybe having that row over plugin installed, so you can actually row back a specific plugin.
Yeah, exactly.
That's also about having proper staging and having either the internal discipline or having a support plan that clearly states in it what the position of the staging site will be. Will they push the latest website to the state? Whoever's doing this, push the latest version of the live site to the staging site. Then will the plugins be installed? Then do they have screenshots of these specific pages? Because these people probably are not involved in your particular website on an ongoing basis, so they can't remember what the normal layout should be. Are they going to do a test of some key functionality? If this all is in part of the contract, it all takes time. The more time is spent on checking, the more the retainer will be, or more the support package will cost. So you've got to take in all these. Am I waffling, Stephen, or am I on the right track?
No, that's a really good point. That's kind of was the direction that I was taking this here, is that you can end up in these situations, right, where the support person is telling you to do these crazy things, and you can't because it's your live site. So really, what is the thing that should happen before you hit these issues is, how have you set up your site for success, as far as making sure, like you were saying, Jonathan, having those backups there, but having a proper strategy for updating plugins, updating WordPress, because that's oftentimes where these errors occur. Sometimes they just pop out of somewhere because of some sort of data that's been inputted into the site, maybe some code that's been added, who knows. They can happen even when you haven't updated it, but probably 95% of the time it comes from when a plugin has updated something, or when WordPress has updated. And really, like what's that old adage, like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, something like that. if you do the legwork ahead of time, you won't find
Yeah.
yourself in these sticky situations.
And it's all interwoven with security as well, all this as well. But I'm just going to put this before we go. I've forgotten when we started. I think we're coming up. We've probably got another 2 to 3 minutes, and we should go for our break. Is the other thing. I don't know if you've noticed that I think WordPress and plugins have got more reliable in some ways, especially the core of WordPress. But when you do get a problem, I'm sensing it's more severe than it used to be. It really is. Oh, the other thing I think I find so frustrating is this new, when you're updating something and WordPress supposedly tries to help you, and it sends that you get that cryptic message. Your website, I forgot the precise wording. Your website is one of your plugins is called a critical error, and you need to do something, but you can't even log into the back end of your website.
Yeah, I think the default email is like your site is experiencing a technical issue. It's like starts with like "howdy!" exclamation mark. So
it's very useful, isn't it?
5.2. When you're
so maybe you could give some of maybe you can, if you can't revert back to a backup. How do you deal with? You got any tips or insights about how you get into the back end of your website when you get that message?
Yeah, so if you get that message and your site is completely offline and there's a critical error and you can't log, like the first thing you should try to do is log into the back end to see if you can still get in. And ideally you can, and you can look at the log file, or you can start deactivating plugins. But if you get the error, the first thing you want to do is try to get access to that log file like we were talking about earlier, so you can see what is causing the issue, because it's probably a plugin, and the fastest thing to do is deactivate the plugin that's causing the problem. Or it could be a theme. So step 1, find the log file. Step 2, try to log into the backend so you can deactivate the plugin. If you cannot log into the backend to deactivate the plugin, your next best option is to log in via PHP myadmin and deactivate the plugin by editing the SQL database table called WP options, which just stores all of your options, and you can actually edit the file to take out to deactivate all of your plugins at once.
Yeah, I'm a little bit, it's fine for you to say that, but the way it depends on your skill level, folks. Another way of dealing that, if you've got FTP client or FTPS or all the other terms they use to, it's basically a client allows to, well, it's FTP, it won't be secure. If it's FTPS, it will be pretty secure. Log in there, find the plugin folder and just rename it.
Yes, yeah, that's also a great way.
And that's a trick that will get you in. I think that's a little bit, I'll be more happier to do that than somebody novice goes into the MySQL actual file without your type of experience, Stephen, because if they do something without a backup of the file and they use the French, they fuck something up, they're really in a bad space then, aren't they?
You're right. That is good advice. It's better to change the file name, because what happens is WordPress looks for the plugin folder name to be able to execute the code inside of it. It looks for that path. And if that path is changed, WordPress automatically won't execute that plugin because it doesn't know that it's supposed to be active or not. So if you FTP into your site and you change in the plugin folder, you're right. That's probably a safer way to go about it.
Now, another tip is have a backup theme. But on the other hand, you probably will have a setup where you've got a parent and then you have a child theme. But then WordPress, when you install WordPress, it installs about, I don't know how many, 3, 4 of their own themes. Well, I remove almost all the extra themes apart from one, and I always leave one. We always leave one theme, one spare theme. We keep that going, and the reason why we do, if you get a corruption of the main theme, the parent theme, or the corruption of the child, it can take the site down, and then you can log in FTPS, whatever, and then you can activate your backup theme, and then that will probably get things up and running, and give you time to see what's going on with the parent-child theme. That's another little tip. Would you agree with that, Stephen?
Yeah, if it's a problem with a theme, that would help solve that issue.
Because I find a lot of people, they play around. I've gone into sites and there's been over 12 to 15 non-active themes. They've bought other commercial themes and they've been trying them out. And that's the other thing. Database clutter can become a problem. If you're trying out different themes, if you're trying out stuff, I would always spin up a test version of WordPress, either on your server, if you're allowed, most better server environments will allow you to set up more than one website. It's on the cheaper end where they won't, or you can do it locally. There's some really easy local setups that you can set up on your Mac or PC, and try out all these different themes. And then when you find one that you like, then upload it to your live website. Because all this stuff, it leaves orphan tables. It leaves what I call chap in your database. When you've got a proper website that's really making you, money, you want to keep everything as clean, as tidy as possible. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, the cleaner you can keep your website, the better. And you don't have to worry. I think sometimes the whole idea of website bloat is a little bit over dramatized at times. Like, if you're a site that's doing tons and tons of WooCommerce orders, that's going to create far more database entries than adding a plugin and removing a plugin. It is something that's out there.
I'm just clean and tidy. That's what it is.
Yeah, and it's better. It's better not to have extra database entries. It's better not to have a bunch of extra cruft floating around. Like, it's
like the house. I wouldn't say I've got a bit of a cleansing problem, but I was known as, in my other businesses, as Mr. Clean. So I think we're going to go for a break, folks, and we'll come back. We'll be delving in this fascinating how you deal with naughty plugins. We'll be coming back in a few moments. Coming back in a long while because bloody Spencer advert goes on for 2 minutes. For fuck's sake, Spencer. Right. We're coming back. Sorry, go on. Sorry.
We're just going to hop into the conversation again.
Yeah, right. It's too late. We're coming back, folks. We've had a fascinating first half of the show. So we're on. Stephen's pointed out that I'm oucher Mr. Clean. He's probably right, about keeping your database sparkling, clean and tidy. But that's just my nature, being that I run a support company. It's become our nature, Stephen. Keep everything clean.
It's good.
Clean and sparkling.
An organized database is a happy database, as they say.
That's it. Keep that database. Now, the other factor is backups. And to say that I'm a bit, how to put it, I've become trying to struggle for the right word. I've really become kind of paranoid about backups. You can't have enough backups, can you, Stephen?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having an extra backup. And really, like, as I've heard people say before, that backups are the cheapest business insurance you can ever buy. So if you have your website backed up in multiple places, that means that you have redundancy. And if there's something catastrophic that happens, you have access then to multiple ways of restoring that data. And the more backups you have, the more often a backups, like hourly, daily, weekly. Like a weekly backup, you could lose a week worth of work. You could lose a week worth of orders if you have to restore from that. So the more backups you have, the more frequent you have, the better off, and the quicker you'll be able to recover from a catastrophic event. One thing I think is really important to understand is that the way WordPress works, if you're running a WooCommerce site or a site that takes orders, if you just restore from a backup and you completely, like if you from a week ago, any orders that you would have currently in your system will get wiped out. So if that is something that's going to happen, make sure you export or download all of those orders that happened after that backup was taken, so that you can re-import them, or at least that you have a record of them, because you don't want to deal with the customer nightmare of somebody, of a week worth of orders just vanishing, and how do you know who's supposed to get what now? It can be
the way we deal with it, if it's a very active membership site, or if it's this would apply to WooCommerce. Now, most decent hosting providers, they provide 30, 60, sometimes 90 days out, depending on what kind of plan level you are. Normally, more superior hosting providers, it's gonna, they're gonna provide a nice interface. It's gonna be literally one click, and the restoration process is normally pretty rock solid. But you cannot totally rely on the hosting provider. They are going to have, and I'm not trying to be nasty here, they are, we've got it on our website. Literally any hosting provider that knows what they're doing is going to have legalized terms and conditions saying, yes, we will provide a backup. Yes, we will do our best. Yes, we're nice people, but no, if we can't recover from our backup, you can't sue us. And that's the terms and conditions on my site. And it's the same terms and conditions that you find on any hosting provider that knows what they're doing. So you got, if you're dealing with like I say, a site that's really important to you for the organization, and that normally revolves around that it's making money. Well, not always. Sometimes it's around a non-profit that has a large membership as well. You've got to have more than just relying on your hosting provider's very attractive and easy used backup. And if it's a crucial site, we suggest that there's another backup system, and that's utilized daily. It's normally at some time in the early morning, where the load on the website is going to be at its lessest. And we suggest that other backup using a quality backup plugin. It goes to it's not stored on the server. It's served somewhere remote, either using Amazon Web Services, Google Drive, or Dropbox, depending on the size. They're all pretty good solutions. You can, some of these backup plugins, they only when you do your first backup, they do a backup of the whole thing, and then they only back up anything that's changed from the first backup. And normally on the more crucial sites, you set that up so it's done daily. Go on, sorry.
I was going to say there's even some backup plugins. Like I think WP-Time Capsule that does real-time backups. So any change that like an order comes in, it's going to back up that order, because like Jonathan was talking about earlier, incremental backups that don't do entire site backups. They only back up the things that change on the site, which is a lot more space efficient. And WP-Time Capsule, I think there's one other plugin, I can't remember who it is right now, but has this idea of incremental backups and also real-time backups, so that it incrementally backs up things in real time. So an order comes in, it'll queue that up to get backed up. Another order comes in, queues it up to get backed up. And so when you need to restore your site, you will have all of the latest things. So it's not, you don't have the potential of a 24-hour-old backup. Your backup is literally minutes old. And that you can roll that all back, which is a really interesting and good way for mission critical sites. If you're running a business site that doesn't have changes, on the minute by minute basis, something like that is probably a little overkill. But if you have an e-commerce store where you're doing, 50 orders a day, 100 orders a day, 1,000 orders a day, whatever, it would be important to have that incremental backup that's happening over a real time, so that if something catastrophic happens, you can roll it back and you won't lose all of that data from the last 24 hours.
Now,
so that's an interesting feature that some plugins have.
Yeah, that's great. Now, we also do what we call our last resort backup. And we normally do, as soon as we take a client on, we normally put some backup software, and we take a backup and we put it somewhere that we have access to, not only the client. When we're talking about these other backups, we normally set it up in a folder that the client owns, but we set it up so we've got access to it as well. But this first backup, we do it, and then every 6 months we do a backup as well. Why do we do that? Well, when we're taking a site over, we have taken sites over, and the client has said, well, there's performance problems, and we've approached our hosting provider, and we never got to the bottom of and it seems to happen, and then it doesn't happen, but we're getting complaints, blah, 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 right? Well, their site's been hacked, but they don't know it, because they either log in as admin, and in some of these hacking scripts, it doesn't show up if you're actually logged in as an administrator. I had this happen to a friend who actually provides support. I won't name him or anything, but he's the principal of the company. He doesn't do any of the work. He relies on other employees, and their own site got hacked, but they didn't notice it because they were always logging in as admin. And then somebody, it happened last week, and it was somebody very notable in the WordPress community, went to their website and they had blogging page about finding your next wife in Russia or something, nothing to do with what they're selling. It was a little bit embarrassing actually, but it goes with the territory. So you can get these where it's deep inside the core, it's buried itself really deep, and you just don't know it. So we start scanning, we use Mailcare as our scanner, our virus and Mailcare scanner, and we found that to be it really flags up some really deep buried stuff. And then we start, and then we start having to hack away, trying to get this cruff out and making sure that it never reappears. So sometimes you can have these, and I've been honest here, the 5 years I've been in support, I don't think we've had a site that we've actively been supporting and keeping everything up to date that's been hacked. we've had plenty of people join us and their sites have been hacked. Either they know it, and on a couple rare occasions, they just haven't known it's there. But for the reasons I've just explained, they just didn't realise. Has that happened to you, Stephen? You know, with
You mean
clients?
sites like people coming over to our service that have had hacked sites? Yeah, every once in a while. Most people that have come over to our service have had experience with hack sites. Most people aren't like currently experiencing a hack is what we've seen. And really, they're like we've talked about hacking before. I think on our website security we did. But like there's like if you do the basic things, keep your plugins updated, have secure passwords, and
it all helps.
Yeah, like it becomes. WordPress is not that easy to hack without a weak point. And if you can keep everything updated, you minimize those weak points.
And also, I'll make sure that link to that podcast we did about security is in the show notes, because we did a detailed dive about security, which was another excellent show. I think we're going to go wrap this up, the podcast part of the show. We'll probably continue the discussion another 10 minutes for bonus content. Where do you see the whole show? Well, you see the whole show plus the bonus content on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel. Go there and do us a favor. Go and subscribe. Plus, there's a load of extra. I've been uploading a ton of video lately about all sorts of subjects on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel. Plus you get all this bonus content. So go over there and subscribe. It'd be well worth it. So Stephen, how can people find out more about you and what you do?
Head over to zipfish.io, run a speed test, find out how we can make your site faster, and book a meeting with me, and I'll sit down and review your site one-on-one with you.
And I've got to say, Stephen and his crew, if you're looking to increase the speed of your website, their service is fantastic. I can't highly recommend it. Also, I'm doing a webinar in December. It's the second Friday of the month. That will be December the 11th at 10:30 Pacific Standard Time, AM Pacific Standard Time. Me and Spencer are going to be talking about marketing automation and how you can use half a dozen free or very inexpensive WordPress plugins to build a system that's the equivalent or better than something like ClickFunnels. And then we're going to be talking about how you link that to external CRM. And I think we're specifically going to be talking about, but I'm not totally sure, got to quantify this with Uncle Spencer, that we're going to be really talking about linking that to something like ActiveCampaign. So we'll be actually showing you a practical example how to do that. Should be a great webinar. Like I say, how do you join? You just go to the WP-Tonic website. On the main navigation, right on the right, there's a button that says webinar. You just go and click it and you can sign up and you'll be notified. It should be great. We'll see you we'll see you next week, where it'll be either great guests or internal discussion between me and Stephen. We'll see you soon. Remember, go over to the Tonic's YouTube channel and join us for the bonus content. We'll see you soon, folks. It's not too noisy. I can hear them hacking away. Bonus content. So anything you want to bring up that we didn't bring up in the... Go on, off you go.
Yeah, I think...
Because it went quick, didn't it?
What is the key thing to not do when your site goes down? Panic. Oftentimes, people freak out and they panic and they just start doing things. And if you don't approach it in an unpanicked sort of way, you can do things that make the situation even worse. For example, restoring from a backup that's 3 months old that wipes 80% of your data away, like that, now you can't recover it. Like, that's it. The key, I think, is to keep a cool head about yourself and just be like, all right, I have this problem. Now, what is the first thing that I need to
I was going to
solve
say
that problem? Don't freak out.
I wasn't going to say this in the main part of the podcast part of the show because it seems a bit self-serving. But any entrepreneur that's making any reasonable money from their website, for them not to have a professional support company helping them, I think they're mad. I think they're mad and bad. I think you've got to be off your rocker, really. You know, it's a bit like having a little bit, you know, car insurance, where they ask you, do you want to sign up for tow truck or roadside assistance? And it's like $2 a month, but you're so tight. Now, if you're desperate for money, you've got to do what you've got to do. But, you know, you get these people that are so tight, or they think, well, I can get my car going, and they won't tick the box for the $2 extra. And then they get stranded 200 miles away from home. They have to be towed back, and, you know, it's like a $1,000 bill or something. It's the same with WordPress. You know, if you've got a site that's making you money and you're not prepared to hire a support company, I think you're bad and mad. What do you reckon, Stephen?
Yeah, if you have a site that is making money where $100 a month or whatever the support cost is, if it's worth that amount of money to make sure your site's always online, it's worth engaging a company like that. Like just having somebody that you can pick up the phone and call and say, hey, my site's down, please fix it, is a huge benefit, because you're not in this freak out mode where you have to try to figure out yourself or try to quickly find somebody. You already have an established relationship, and you have a relationship with somebody that understands your site, what's happening on your site, the plugins that are on your site, and they can solve that problem far faster and make sure they solve it in a way that recovers as much data as possible, or make sure you don't lose any data, because they understand what's going on. They understand the intricacies of their site because they've been working with that site for a while. The last time you want to hire somebody is when you're in the middle of a problem. If all of a sudden your pipes burst and your house is filling with water, that's not the time to try to make a new relationship with a plumber. Like, it'd be nicer to already know a plumber that you trust, that you can call and be like, hey, I have this problem, can you come fix it? That's the same thing with websites. Like, if you have that person in your back pocket, it's
and to be fair, it's nothing worse for the support company that when you called in and it's an emergency situation and you know nothing about the setup, you don't know anything about what they've installed, you don't know what backups they've got, you're just going in blind. It's not great for the support people either, is it?
No, it's harder, and it takes more time to support a site that you know nothing about, that you're starting from ground zero, and you have to start unraveling everything on how the site works.
And you're having to ask them loads of questions, and they're stressed as it is for obvious reasons. You know, the adrenaline is really going, and they're stressed to the limit, and you're having to ask them all these questions. Because you've got to ask them, but you know, it's not a great situation, is it?
Yeah, like there's so many cases where we've had clients reach out and they are like, they have a problem or an issue, and they're like, my site's down, or something's broken, something's not working, and it's like, oh, I know that you're using ACF, and I know that you're using LearnDash, and I know that ACF just updated their plugin because they had these issues, and before I even open the site, I know exactly what the problem is because I've seen your site before. I've worked on your site before, versus starting from ground zero where it's like, what plugins do you even have? But because we've worked with that site, you know off the top of your head, like I know where the issue is going to be. I know how to fix this problem. Where, like, you know, if you engage with that support company earlier on, they can do that. They know these things already.
Yeah, no, and almost not every week, but it's regular. It's more than once a month. Regularly, I have this conversation. We've got our membership site. We had it developed. We're on this hosting. We're on this hosting plan. I won't name names. And we built it. We were and it was working fine. And then I got my first batch of students. You know, I sent out the first email saying, looking for my first batch of members from my online tribe. And it all collapsed, Jonathan. You know, nobody can sign up, nobody can log in, nobody can do anything. I'm getting all these emails, Jonathan, from these people saying what's going on, and some of them want a refund, and they're some of my biggest followers on social media, and it's all gone bad, Jonathan. And the truth is, it's not been stress tested. And
Yeah.
what do I mean? What do I mean by that, listeners and viewers? Well, it'd be viewers because it's our bonus content. Well, yes, in development mode, any kind of crappy hosting is going to be okay unless it's really, really, really bad. It's all going to go swimmingly well, but that doesn't matter, because what matters is it's got to be stress tested. You've got to have multiple people logging in at the same time. You've got to set up 12, 20 dummy accounts. Then you're going to have to get some people. If you don't do all that, you've got to make sure that you have the kind of hosting that can deal with 20 plus people logging in at the same time, because unless you sorted that out, it's very unlikely you ever make any money unless you're charging. You've got a very niche area where you're charging an enormous amount of money. And I'm not having a go anybody that does that. It depends the value proposition that your course can provide. But, you know, in the normal price ranges that I'm dealing with, you're going to have like a couple hundred people as members. And that could be a nice business. But all this cheap hosting, it doesn't pan out. It's all designed for small businesses that don't have a lot of people go to their website. It is not designed for an active WooCommerce website or a learning management or a Buddy Boss website. It never was designed for that. What do you reckon, Stephen?
Yeah, I would agree with that. That like at different points in your company, you need different types of hosting. Sometimes you just need the cheapest that you can get because you're just starting out and you don't have any users. As soon as you start getting users, you might need to start thinking about upgrading. The more users you get, the more power you need. And those costs will scale with it. But it's important to know and stress test your website to know when you're going to hit those breaking points, or at least talk with your hosting provider. And like if you have a big Black Friday sale, and it's good to just have a quick conversation with whoever you're hosting with and saying, hey, I'm expecting to have 5,000 people on my site over the next couple of days, or 10,000 or 50,000 or 1 million. Like who knows how big your company is. But it's important to have those conversations so that you can make sure your site has the resources to handle that load of traffic, because it's very different from having a person land on your homepage and just click around a little bit versus trying to do 100 concurrent WooCommerce transactions at one time. That causes a significant, like exponentially significant more strain on your server than just viewing, than 10,000 people viewing your homepage. So it's just important to keep your service provider in the loop, to make sure that you have the resources that you need, or your maintenance company, whatever you've hired to do that. Like, let them know what's going on in your company, so that they can support it and service it properly.
Yeah, I think we wrap it up now. They're cutting some trees down near to where I live. They're making a little bit of a racket, but hopefully they haven't picked it up too much. They weren't too noisy during the podcast. We'll see you soon, folks. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.